Okay, we're entering part 3 here of the series on this, and this is again Robert Sepper, and you need to check out his channel definitely on this, as I've said in the first video, but also he makes books here, and I only have one of which, and I wish I had the new ones, or the other ones that came after it and everything for, it makes pretty damn good connections, and again, I don't have to agree with 100% of what he says. It's validating whatever I've been saying and showing to you all over the last couple of years, and it shows you one of the rare few people that are making these connections and putting out things along this line and going to this depth and not just kind of hinting around the subject and veering away from it either, but standing up to it and then having you walk up and come here and look at this. Hold, here, let me light your torch off mine. Lean forward, take a look. See what's going on here? Enough to where you can make the connection at some point, and I'm sure you've made a lot of connections here. If you haven't seen part 1 or 2, then go to the top left hand corner at the very end of this video and it'll take you back to 1. This one shouldn't take that long, but then again, I think we're doing 30 minutes of video through Robert's talking about it, but due to my over talking, I've made it into an hour and a half, almost 2 hours worth of video now. And yeah, somebody made a comment that I'm one of the only guys that can take 5 minutes worth of video and make 45 minutes out of it. And I think I did one time doing one thing. So yeah, if I don't quit talking, it'll never happen either. And I've noticed that I've talked 15-20 minutes before actually starting off from the picture and going through an article before, just trying to get somebody in the flavor before we even get going pretty much. But I hope it doesn't annoy people whenever I do that. I'm sure people that have heard me talk about all these subjects so much don't want to hear it all, and I kind of am editing myself in doing this now because I've talked about so many. So I make references to other videos and so on and try to only make a few connections. If I sat and made all the connections that go along with it, this thing would be a 6-part series on a 30 minutes worth of video, and it would just be outstandingly excessive and full of minutia information, but trying to just keep on a direct path here and go off what he's saying and making the connections. I like his lurid style. So let's just go ahead and continue from here where we're at, and we're going to be talking about, of course, snake worship. We were recently talking about Saint Christopher and how that Saint Patrick, forgive me, but Patrick and where that comes from. But then you'd know him as the Bible as Saint Peter also, that you go back with that. Well, he's the father figure of Christianity. Oh yeah, well he's Dios Pater, and who's that? Well, that's Iapetus. Who's that? That's Jupiter, Dios Pater. That's him. That's the same thing. So here we go rolling around with the same situation over and over again. And it tried to be straightened out at one time real good. We've been living off it 2,000 years, but it's kind of a weird thing because when you're straightening out bullshit with more bullshit, you kind of never really get to the reality of it. People have twisted it too much. So let's go from here talking about giant snakes and world snakes around the world tree and situation to dragons.
And are symbolically portrayed as a dragon or serpent in many European myths and legends. This dragon symbolism can be seen in Transylvania, where we find Dracula, which translates into dragon,
So we talked about that before, and Draco and how it all works out, but dragon also in linguistics and speech means people that see true, things along this line. And this seems to carry back from a point that there are people that knew what the hell was going on, to the point a lot of people said it too, and there are dragons that are forms that you see here that are from those people. It's a little bit different, and it looks half Chinese, half the dragon that we understand, but also like a winged serpent from South America, and there's a reason for that. It also looks like a seahorse, and it's got a horse thing to do along with it a little bit. And there's a reason for that also, but its rear end body there is a half snake symbology. Again, there's a reason for that. So these dragons, you always heard about them. They need sacrifice. They're taking your cattle. They're doing this. They end up wanting some virgins, maidens, and so on to go on with that. And then they were satiated for a while, but it kept continuing, and eventually you had to fight the dragon and da da da. Well, isn't it wonderful that that's actually themselves telling the story about how you kicked their ass? Well, did they really? No, you're them. Well, I thought I was the people that, yes, yes, oh, yes. You don't understand. They're actually one and the same people. The snake turned around and bit itself. Here are two snakes coming together. Same situation. Same song. So, how could I have possibly lost that? Let's see if it'll go back to that exact moment. No, not in any way. So we see the symbology that's here. And let's see if I can get to the point that he was real quick here in the video. And talk about dragons
dragon
again.
or serpent in many European myths and legends. This dragon symbolism can be seen in Transylvania, where we find Dracula, which translates into dragon, who incidentally Prince Charles claims he's genetically related to. As for the Druids, their kings were called Pendragons, as they were in the Middle East, and can be traced back to Anatolia, where they were also the Proto-Sumerian ancestors venerated by the Germanic secret societies, such as the Vril and Thule Society.
Now, there's a big connection that's there, but when we talk about Pendragon, he's not going to even go on to it, but hopefully you're into it enough to understand who Vril and things are. But no, worse than that, or better than yet, that's Arthur's name, and Uther Pendragon, and what had happened, and the king that had come in. And I've also made the offhand weird remark that whenever they say he pulls a sword out of a stone, that he's actually taking chunks of ore and making a sword out of it, and in doing so, like an ancient dwarven smith, is pulling off that effect. They make sure that the Lady of the Lake or the water goddess and all these things are in the situation. It still shows you connections. And if you're in the know, then you're like, oh, okay. And if you're not, you're like, what the fuck? Oh, no, he was here, and then the Romans came and everything. Sure, there's stuff about that too, but it kind of fades because everybody still knows all that, so they can't turn it into another thing. So now it only goes back to a certain point and it becomes legend, folklore, and mythology. Kind of works that way. Here's these Terran Basin mummies that are definitely Proto-Indo-European. The sacred eye right in the middle of her forehead and a tattoo. She's got her hair braided, and these ancient pyramids that are there in this Terran Basin area. They go back 2000 BC in the Terran Basin. They're Caucasian. East Asian people began showing up in China 3,000 years ago, or over 1,000 years after this point. And that's how deep we know it goes, so far. And this fabric that she has woven around her, that's her scarf and her clothing, it's incredible made fabric for the time. You really don't see as good of fabrics as this, except for a few places. And it seems like they're all connected to those too. They were the fabric type people, but there's more to do with fabric and hemp in these people and everything that goes along with it that isn't some symbolic, simple little thing. It goes much deeper.
And who also left mummified remains in China, known as the Tocharians, near massive pyramids in China, which are either ignored or purposely hidden by the communist Chinese government, who know the truth of where their first emperors, swastikas, and dragon symbolism really stems from, not to mention Buddhism itself. This royal bloodline was also known as fairy royalty. So not only were the Druids or Dragon Kings Scythians from Aryan Anatolia, the same Aryan tribes that introduced the thunder god Thor and his hammer to Europe, which is named after Europa, a Phoenician princess, but also the Saxons or Anglo-Saxons.
So now we're making a bunch of connections. Well, let's hold up on that for a second and put that together too. For what we're seeing here are fairies. Oh wait, are we seeing elves? Oh, wait. Are we seeing Scythians? Or are we seeing Pan and satyrs and Saturn worshippers and the connective of that, and how no matter what it goes back to that? Oh, sneaky. No, not sneaky. Woven into legend and myth. What do they call them? Fairies. How fair are they? Answers, yeah. Check them out. But don't they always have these kind of goat ears? Funny how we put those on Spock, for he was the very logical, clear seeing, like a dragon, and his ancient planet was Vulcan, and he used the ancient symbology and live long and prosper. About this symbol they can't talk about anymore after World War II propaganda. Let's continue.
As well as the Getai, meaning goat in Swedish, which were also the Thracian tribes that once inhabited the regions to either side of the lower Danube, in what is today northern Bulgaria and southern Romania, sharing affinities with the Goths, which are the German tribes of northern and eastern Europe, as well as the Guti of Mesopotamia, and becoming the mighty Kush Empire in India. Now let's look.
Now we've talked about the Gitans and even how that works with guitar and tar and Tartaria and words and connectives that go along with that. But also we can see how a people, it showed in those maps, well here they are, well there they are, well there they are. Well, one of those was saying they came back from older times, it was here. Another one said, no, they're over here. What's odd is, whenever you look at it now, they go, no, those are the Huns. Oh, wait, no, wait, well, those are the Proto-Europeans. Oh, yeah, but those people are the Tuatha Denon. Yeah, okay, and the fairies and everything, but that's not the same as the other one. Well, there's the Anglo-Saxons. Okay. So who are the fairies? Who are the elves? Who are this, that, and the other? And they all go along this thing and blend all in. Let me tell you, they ain't little people. Oh, isn't it funny how that gets twisted in the story? And you now become the people that were the little people, and they were even bigger than yourself. They were Fomorian giants and so on. But it's really it's a double flip there. But yet we all can see right through that and know that they weren't Tinkerbell, right? So where does that all come from? Well, the same people. They're quite creative people with stories. Let's continue.
Look at a quote by Lawrence Gardner from his book, Realm of the Ring Lords, The Myth and Magic of the Grail Quest.
Ring Lords.
Quote, the Tuatha De Danann were the Black Sea princes of Scythia. Like the original dynastic pharaohs, they traced their descent from the great pendragons of Mesopotamia. From them sprang the kingly lines of the Irish, Brutni, and the Picts of Scotland, Caledonia. In Wales, they founded the royal house of Gwynedd, while in Cornwall, in the southwest of England, they were the sacred gentry known as Picts. So, from a single cast of the original blood royal, whether known as the Sangreal, the Albigens, or the Ring Lords, we discover many of the descriptive terms which sit at the very heart of popular folklore. For here, in this one noble race, we have the elves, fairies, and pixies, not beguiling little folk, but distinguished kings and queens of the dragon succession.
So, there's this rich stories about elves and everything that goes along with it, and you wonder if there's any reality to any of it, and where they're little people and this, that, and the other, and they tell you that these mounds used to be associated with them, and these stories about where you can go around a mound a certain amount of times and you can sing these stories and everything. What's that got to do with ancient rites that they used to do whenever they would go around and do this idea? But if you find out that a lot of the little children's stories, like the maypole and things like that, ashes, ashes, we all fall down, are not about the most sweet things. I've got a video maybe coming up about something like that, and lullabies and the earliest lullabies of the Sumerians and so on. But um, so now we're seeing connections that go all the way through, and I missed it for there must have been already in this that a picture of the ancient Sumerian holding the pine cone and doing his deal, but I think it was during the Templars pouring, and it shows you that they're wearing that Templar cross way, way back when. And so now we start to make connections on who was who is who is who now, and so on. And they tell you that they ruled over the black-headed people. Maybe that has some truth to it, but if you look at their breeding prowess and the amount of people they brought in to run the thing in the first place, it didn't come that for very long. And then it grew so big, it expanded out of there, and nobody ever really mentions it. And this Hyksos thing that we hear about ends up being part of the biblical tale, but isn't this all still part of the biblical tale? So whenever I tell you you just tear it all apart in the reality of it all, not only can I do it in verses and things and start to show you things, but if we took that out of the situation totally, think of it that way, and I was just telling you the story, here it is, and then we say, hey, well, these one guys had this cool story, let me tell you it, and I started reading from the Bible, you'd probably start to make connections. That's odd, because that's what I kind of did, because I didn't want to take on the Bible, and I started studying everything around it, and the Sumerians especially, and the connectives of these ancient people of the Tigris and Euphrates, and what had gone on, where the Bible says Eden did, and it's like, wow, they called their land Eden? That's weird. Oh wait, here's another connection. That's weird. Oh wait, here's Gilgamesh stories. Here's this ancient one. My teacher even told me about it whenever I had to read the whole one about the ancient tales of Grendel and Beowulf, and she had mentioned it to me and everything. Oh, well, I know what you're into. You ought to check out that. She's very influential in that way to me. In fact, it's like, well, I'm thinking about doing my paper on this, and she goes, you ought to do this. And I'm like, oh, well, and she goes, yeah, but you ought to do this, because you'd like it once, and I come to find out, oh, that's got a lot of connectives in it too. It's weird how things make all these connections that nobody really sees, and it's just like if you're looking here and you don't see the Hollywood sign there for the trees, if you're not in the right spot, you might not even know. Whenever I took my wife to Hollywood there and we went around, we go up these neighborhoods, and then I said, oh, well, hold on a second, and they had a GPS kind of thing there, and I'm looking on it, and I go, well, let me just go more that way. Took a right, went up a road, couldn't see it, took a left, couldn't see it, she couldn't see it down the run, and I was, well, hold on a second, all of a sudden I come veering across, and I go, there it is, and we just kept going to the left. But then I knew where I was, so we ended up coming closer. I've got some pictures of it, but also, you don't see the connections. But if you look closer, there are telephone poles, and there's so many wires connecting all of these things together in that. Yeah, and it goes across the road too, and da-da-da, they go all over the place. It's amazing. And somebody in that house right now would have connections to people that could talk to in a faraway place. Well, how long did that go on? Well, that's how long was the Pony Express going on? That's one of those weird things where you can say, well, they had that going on long before America was even refound again, and the idea of putting horses in line for you to go for and keep a fresh horse going on. But then again, cowboys, and how long did they have wagons, and they were going west? Oh man, with them Scythians, that goes well the hell back, doesn't it? Yeah, and then if we look in reality of how far that really went back, yeah, it goes back before the wheel, or what we really to agree goes on that. And their most ancient tales tell they were just trying to bring it back, and bring it back from what? Well, there was these people that had it really going on, and they're trying to bring it back. Yeah. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. Again, check out Robert Sepper's channel. It's spelled at the top there, but Sepehr. He writes books and things, made a bunch of videos. It's fantastic. He gives me a lot of inspiration. where I see that he makes all these connections. I don't want to take and make videos and go, well, I don't agree with this or whatever, but he does make some connections on things, UFOs, if you will, uh, people making secret bases in Antarctica, if you will, and things that come out of that. And of course, some of these things that he's studying is up to a closer modern time that I try to veer away from. Underground civilizations, things along that nature. But I touch upon ideas like that, but I don't go that deep into them. I'm a little different flavor, but one of very similar. You recognize it. And not that I had everything figured out. Like I say, I might agree with 95% of what he says. And he makes incredible connections that for you do. Not that I make that other 95 into 100, for I don't even think that I agree with 90% of whatever I've got going on. There's still some missing connectives. And someday we may find them, someday we won't. But I'm telling you, I was set at about 78% until a few special sites that were found in genetics jumped on the picture. And then we found Gobekli Tepe, and I was like, dude, I'm like 96 now. I'm pegging it, and some more articles come out, and I'm like, this is getting undeniable. Undeniable. But you have to put it all together, and some people put pieces together and they don't know they've got part of the whole puzzle that they're not really putting together and what attaches. Even archaeologists, and Sepper talks about it too. Bring archaeology back in one of his videos. And why? Well, because everybody's got a directive now and it has to fit under a certain box, and there's a hell of a lot of things that don't fit under a box. And if you took out the modern directive out of the situation again and just looked at it wide open, you'd go, oh, this is a little, oh, whoa, yeah. And so how far does it go back versus what you're taught on just about anything? In fact, there was a series there that I was pretty much my catch line, where I was finding over and over again, and I was telling you, hey, when I was a kid, they told you this, and then we found out that, but they were still telling us this, and then we found out that and that, and I found out my kids are still telling this, but check out what they just found. And my kids didn't hear about it till I told them. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. On to the next one. Peace.